Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in 2019. Just a quick note before I start this video, I was never an active reader in my life. I would read books for school and on vacation, but I never read this amount of books that I read this year. This year, my goal was to read 10 books and I actually achieved it last week. This week is the last week of November and I just started my 11th book, so I read 10 books this year and I'm really proud of myself. I know that for some people that's not a lot. Some people that I follow on Goodreads, they read 50 books this year or 30 books and that's amazing, but I always read like 2 books per year or something like that, and this year I wanted to just step up my level and to read 10 books and I actually achieved it. So those are the books that I'm going to talk about today, and for 2020 I want to read 15 books at least. If you want me to do a video showing you my 2020 reading list, I can do it for you, so let me know in the comments down below. So in this video I'm going to talk about all the books that I read this year. I'm going to talk about the book description, what I thought about it, all of that stuff. And to know everything, you can follow me on Goodreads. My Goodreads is going to be in the description and here on the screen for you to follow. The first book that I read this year was The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F by Mark Manson. Everyone wants you to believe that the secret to a good life is to have a nicer job or a better car or a prettier girlfriend. The key to a good life is not giving an F about more. It's giving an F about less. Giving an F about only what is true and immediate and important. So this book was the first self-development book that I read in my entire life and I absolutely loved it. I like how Mark Manson writes and how he gives examples about things that happen in his life and other people's lives, but he doesn't go a lot into it. It's just to give you the example of what happened in someone's lives and how you can implement that attitude in your own life. This book taught me a lot about not caring about most of the things that I was caring about in my life. One of my friends that does bullet journal with me, he was the person that I would reach out to if I was like not sure about a page or a layout or a theme, and his response was always like, "You're thinking about it too much." And that was just like the case. And since I read this book and I recommended it to him, I have not asking him anything. I just do whatever I feel like. I don't think about it too much. I just go for it. It's one of those books that you should read even though you never read or you don't like self-development books. This book can really open your eyes to see the things in a different way. So I read it at 10 out of 10. It's one of the books that I want to read every year or every other year, but it's a keeper, so I highly recommend you checking this out because this book is amazing. The next book was Call Me By Your Name by Andrea Aciman. During a rentless summer on the Italian Riviera, a powerful romance blooms between 17-year-old Elio and his father's house guest, Oliver. Unrelenting currents of obsession and fear, fascination and desire threaten to overwhelm the lovers who at first feign indifference to the charge between them. What grows from the depths of their souls is a romance of scarcely 6 weeks' duration, and an experience that marks them for a lifetime. For what the two discover on the Riviera and during a sultry evening in Rome is the one thing they both already fear they may never truly find again: total intimacy. So I decided to read this book because the movie was coming out and I realized that the movie had Italian parts in it. So I decided that because I was in a book wave, I decided to read the book first and then watch the movie, because normally when you watch the movie and you have a book to read, you prefer to read the book, and that happened to me a lot in the past. I would read a book and then watch the movie and the movie was like, and I preferred to read the book, so I decided to try that. But I didn't enjoy the book because first, it is not my style. This is fiction and romance, and I just thought that the book was going to be different. I really liked the relationship between them in the book and like the scenes and all that stuff, but I realized that the book spends a long time in one scene and they just don't move on. And when a book spends like, I don't know, 5 to 6 pages in one scene and they don't give you new information and they don't show you new things, I become bored. And that is the problem with this book and with a lot of books that I read this year. Sometimes when the story is not that super interesting, or I'm putting a lot of expectations on top of the book and the book doesn't suit me, I just don't like it. So I rated 5 out of 10 because I like the story, I like the romance between them. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to read the book. But it was just not my style. But if you like fiction and if you like romance, this is a good go. Then I read Big Magic: Creative Living Beyond Fear by Elizabeth Gilbert. Readers of all ages and from all walks of life have drawn inspiration from Elizabeth Gilbert's books for years. Now this beloved author digs deep into her own generative process to share her wisdom and unique perspective on creativity. With profound empathy, wit, and generosity, she offers poignant insights into the mysterious nature of inspiration. Whether we are looking to write a book, make art, find new ways to address challenges in our work, embark on a dream long deferred, or simply infuse our everyday lives with more mindfulness and passion, Big Magic cracks open a world of wonder and joy. This book is a self-development book, but it's more related to art and creativity. I have seen this book a lot online in one of those book hauls on YouTube, and I decided to purchase it because I read this book in April, and back then I was starting to see my growth on YouTube and Instagram, and this book gives me the perspective that most of people that are starting to grow on Instagram and YouTube don't have. In this book, she talks a lot about how ideas come and go, how you can feel unmotivated to create something, how sometimes you don't want to care about anything that you're doing and you feel pressured and you feel overwhelmed about your art. And this book really taught me that it's okay, it's part of the process, and you should just care about what you're creating and put your things out there. Just create art. It gives you just a nice advice if you want to create art and you are pressured or feel overwhelmed. This is a really good book, so I highly recommend this book. I gave it a 10 out of 10. The next book that I read was Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Guy Montag is a fireman. His job is to destroy the most illegal of commodities, the source of all discord and unhappiness, the printed book. Montag never questions the destruction of his own bland life, until he is shown a past where people didn't live in fear and a present where one sees the world through ideas. Montag starts hiding books in his home. Soon they'll make him run for his life. So I decided to read this book because, again, the movie was coming out and I decided to read this book instead of watching the movie because I was really curious about what was the book about. We know that it's people that burn books because they are illegal, but I really wanted to see the book perspective on it, and it has the same problem of the Call Me By Your Name book, for me at least. The author spends a lot of time in one scene and he doesn't develop the scene, he doesn't show anything new, he's just like the guy thinking, and you're just like reading and reading his thoughts, but you're not getting any new information. I actually didn't enjoy the book at all. I gave it a 3 out of 10 because it's just like not my style, I guess. I like when the book is super interesting and it has little plot twists in the middle of the book. This one wasn't the case. Next, we have Everything is Effed, a book about hope by Mark Manson. We live in an interesting time. Materially, everything is the best it's ever been. Yet somehow everything seems to be irreparably and horribly effed. What's going on? If anyone can put a name to our current malaise and help fix it, it's Mark Manson. In Everything is Effed, Manson draws on mountains of psychological research as well as on the timeless wisdom of philosophers from Plato to Tom Waits, to dissect religion, politics, money, entertainment, and the internet. So this is another book by Mark Manson, and when I saw that this was coming out, I pre-ordered it, and the next day I went to the store and I bought it because I knew that this book was going to be amazing, just like the first one. This book is not part 2 of the other book. A lot of people think that the first book is the first part and this is the second. They are completely different. That book talks about not caring about things that happen in your life. This book talks about how hope can destroy our lives, basically. That was the idea that I had from this book. In this book, he explains how a lot of people live their lives hoping for something to happen, hoping for having something, and he shows how effed that is, basically. He gives a lot of examples about politics and in history too, that hope can destroy your lives. And this book also gave me the perspective that I shouldn't hope for anything. So in my last video, I created the vision board that it's right there. And one of the quotes that I put on my vision board was, "No expectations, no disappointments." And that quote stuck to me since I read this book, because this book is all about that. You shouldn't expect anything in your life. You should just live every day and just care about the day that you're living, and not hoping for hitting a certain milestone or hoping to have that job. Just go with the flow, and what life has to give you, it will give you. It's not because you're hoping to something to happen that is going to happen. And in this book, he explains that a lot. I give it a 10 out of 10 because Mark Manson, I think it's one of my favorite authors. He explains the things so well. And for someone that it's not a native English speaker, reading his books in English helped me a lot with my English, because the way that he writes is just so simple to read that it's one of the reasons why I'm obsessed with this book. So I give it a 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. The next book that I read was The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Habits emerge without our permission. Habits are so powerful because they create neurological cravings. Often, these cravings emerge so gradually that we're not really aware they exist. To create a new habit, put together a cue, a routine, and a reward. Then cultivate a craving that drives the loop. This book was one of the best books that I read this year. I don't have the book with me because I gave it to my best friend. She's studying psychology, and I knew that that book was going to be perfect for her. I really loved the book because, as you know, I track my habits every month on my bullet journal, and I'm always trying to track new habits and to try to see what habits I would like to implement in my life, and the ones that I do daily and the ones that don't work for me. And in this book, I really understood how habits work in your mind and not just on your bullet journal to do them every day. The author also gives you a lot of examples of important and successful people, how they became so successful, how they created those habits. It gives you a lot of examples, and it shows you how you can create new habits. So if you are someone that wants to stop doing a habit like drinking or smoking, and you want to implement a new one like going to the gym or doing more yoga, going outside more, and now, especially with the new year coming, it's the best book for you to read to actually do and stay consistent with your New Year's resolutions, because he also explains how a lot of people say that they are going to do a habit but they don't know how and they quit. So I highly recommend this book if you are someone who likes habits and want to do more habits in their lives. This book really helped me, and now I feel much more in the same page with my habits, so I give it a 10 out of 10, obviously, and I highly recommend you check it out. The next book that I read this year was The Little Book of Ikigai by Ken Monji. In Japan, Ikigai is the reason to get up in the morning. The ancient Eastern philosophy has never been so relevant. It has the potential to change your life and make you happier, showing you how to start small, find your flow, discover your passion, look for joy in the little things. Through the expert guidance of Ken Monji, this wondrous gem of a book will help you realize and discover your very own Ikigai. So this was one of the books that I got from like a book sale, and it's really hard to find these types of books that are not super popular here in Portugal in English. So when I saw that this book was available for purchase here in Portugal, I purchased it because I am always curious to know how other people live their lives and how they implement things in their lives, and their way of thinking to live a meaningful life. So I purchased this book with the hope that it would like give me a nicer perspective on life and all that stuff. It's a self-development book. I thought this book was going to be about Ikigai, but the author spends a lot of time talking about examples, and he doesn't give you the information that you want to read. It's one of those books that you expect more from it, and he doesn't give you half of it. I just didn't find it helpful in any way. I give it a 4 out of 10 because even though it is a good book in a way, I didn't find it interesting. So it's a 4 out of 10. Next, I read Looking for Alaska by John Green. Alaska young, gorgeous, clever, funny, sexy, screwed up, and utterly fascinating. Miles Heather could not be more in love with her. But when tragedy strikes, Miles discovers the value and the pain of living and loving unconditionally. Nothing will ever be the same. This is a book that every teenager reads when they're like 13. This book was published in 2005. I'm so late. But I read John Green's work in the past and I wanted to read this book now. I'm 19, I'm not that late. I'm kind of late to read this book and that's why I didn't enjoy it that much. I liked the story, I found it really interesting. It's a Netflix series. Now they have a series on HBO, I think. And I'm going to watch it for sure because I really liked the book. It was not something like truly different. It was a John Green story like the other ones, but I really enjoyed the book. Even though it's fiction and it has kind of a plot twist in the end, I really enjoy it. It's an 8 out of 10. I think everyone should read it once in their lifetime. I think it's one of those books that are going to stick with you if you read it. I really enjoy it. 8 out of 10. Next, I read The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. Murder is a very simple crime, but at the hands of a maniac, a serial killer, it becomes a very complicated business. With the whole country in a state of panic, the killer is growing more confident with each successive execution. But laying a trail of deliberate clues to taunt the proud Hercule Poirot might just be his first mistake. I can't say that I loved the book, but I can say that I hate it. I like to read and to listen about crimes and serial killers and all of that. But in book it's kind of different and I didn't relate a lot with her writing. I'm going to still read Agatha Christie's books in 2020, but this one wasn't just like my type. So I give it a 7 out of 10 because I liked the book, but it wasn't one of my favorites. That's basically what it is. It wasn't my favorite book. And the last book that I read this year was Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig. The world is messing with our minds. Rates of stress and anxiety are rising. A fast, nervous planet is creating fast and nervous lives. Notes on a Nervous Planet is a personal and vital look at how to feel happy, human, and whole in the 21st century. So I was really curious to read this book because first it was released in 2019, so it's super recent, and secondly, it's all about anxiety and mental health and how social media interacts with our lives in the world that we live in. So I thought it was the perfect book to read this year. This book really spoke to me because we are currently living in a world where social media kind of dominates our lives and everyone is obsessed on Instagram and YouTube, and we don't step back and think about everything that is going around us, and we don't no longer know how to live without technology and social media. And in this book it's kind of like a diary. He writes about his experience with anxiety and social media, reading his experience and how he overcame being a super anxious person with panic attacks all the time and stressing about everything, to a person that now is sane and that he looks at the world in a different perspective and he creates habits to not stress and feel anxious. It's really amazing, and it's a quick book. It's divided in little chapters, so it's really easy to read, and it has a lot of inspirational and motivational things on the book. I was posting them on Instagram because I just felt that it's a book that everyone should read, and that it gives you a nice alert that you shouldn't be super addicted to social media, and you should just spend a day without social media and trying to live your lives without technology and all that stuff. And it's really impressive to see his evolution between someone that it was super anxious in the past and now he is better and he recovered from his anxiety and panic attacks that he was having on a daily basis, and all because of social media. It's one of those books that you're just we needed this. I give it a 10 out of 10. I really enjoyed the book. It spoke to me because it's our lives right now. It's social media, it's technology, it's anxiety, and our lives are based on that right now. So it was just one of those books that we needed that. We needed that book. So I give it a 10 out of 10 and I highly recommend you to read it. So those are the books that I read in 2019. I know that they are just 10 books, nothing special. In 2020 I want to read 15 books. Let me know if you want me to do a video about what books I plan on reading in 2020. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Like this video if you enjoyed knowing more about books. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!